Yeah. So how are you today? How are you there? Did you work? Oh, good, good. Did you take a drink?
Yeah.
Anyone doesn't have it? Why don't you try them first? Thank you. So we are the ColaboGate team. Today we hold the meeting. We are very, very appreciated to all the audience, then the presenter. Even in a tough schedule, Kyber Network and Trace will speak the presentation. So in advance, we'd like to make a brief introduction of ColaboGate, what we are doing. We just started a project from last year, December. So far we hold events almost. This is the 4 times. Mitsui-san is one of our co-founders of the project. He will make a brief introduction of the ColaboGate right now.
Hey, hello everyone. Nice to meet you, and I appreciate joining our community. And we are ColaboGate, and I'm a co-founder and the CEO of the ColaboGate. And we are global formation by entrepreneurs and developers and the community manager. And we invite promising projects from overseas, and we have a meetup like this twice in a month. And today we introduce 2 projects, and both of projects will be a main component to the decentralized application in the future. So thank you for coming, and we will start presentation, the Kyber Network. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lloyd Liu. I'm a CEO and co-founder of Kyber Network. We are based in Singapore. It's 6 hours and a half from Japan, from Tokyo. Thanks everyone for coming on a Monday evening. I know that it's hard to everyone must get tired after the first day of the week. So I hope that this section is going to be useful to everyone. Right. Kyber Network is a decentralized exchange, and today I'm going to talk about how we work and how we benefit other decentralized applications in our ecosystem. So in the last few years, we have seen a massive growth of cryptocurrency and blockchain. We can see that according to the total market cap of the entire ecosystem. You can see that the growth is like exponential, right? Just in 2014, the market cap is around $5 billion US. But this year I think it's already around 400 billion US. And the number of coins and tokens are being issued also increasing significantly. I think today we must have around 10,000 coins and different tokens being issued on different blockchains. So due to the increase in the number of coins and tokens, also the market cap, we also see the increase in the trading activities. So this is the graph for the daily trading volume, and we can see that in December last year, the daily trading volume is around 3 or 4 billion US, which is extremely high compared to just 6 months before that, right? But when we look at the graph, we see that in 2014 there was some significant drop at the total market cap, and there was some serious event happened in 2014 that was when Mt. Gox got hacked. And in case you don't know, Mt. Gox was one of the biggest exchange for Bitcoin back in 2013. So Mt. Gox couldn't answer to their users what happened to 800,000 Bitcoin deposited to the exchange. They claim that they got hacked, but many people suspected that the exchange just spent the coin and couldn't pay back to the users. Whatever happened, the user got affected, and the entire sentiment to the market get bad and bad, right? So Mt. Gox was not the only incident. I think just last month we have the incident with CoinCheck, and 500 million of US dollar got stolen, and I think it makes the regulation it makes the regulators worry, and also users also do not know what are they supposed to do, right? So all these incidents happen so frequent that so many people already lose the confidence to centralized changes. This is due to the centralized nature of these changes. So at the end of the day, people still need to trust only a few guys to keep and secure their asset, right? This is totally against the nature of decentralized and trustless that blockchain and cryptocurrency are advocating. So this gives the rise of decentralized exchanges. So last year alone, we have seen so many projects starting their own decentralized chains, including EtherDelta, Kyber Network, 0x, SWAP, and Omisego. Each of them have different approaches, so I'm not going into the detail of how they work, but this is a brief comparison between all the projects. EtherDelta, SWAP, and 0x, they follow some sort of hybrid model in which they have the off-chain order book, and when there's a match between the seller and the buyer, the settlement is going to happen on the blockchain. So with this model, the user have to trust the servers or the website that store the order book, right? Omisego has a different approach. So what they do is they build their own plasma chain, which is connected to the Ethereum main chain, right? And this approach allows them to have better scalability, because in their own plasma chain they can fine-tune a few parameters and allow more transactions to happen. But with Kyber Network, what we do is we build everything on-chain, even the matching and also the price discovery also happens on the smart contract. So with that, the user do not have to trust any other party, any other component. They just talk to the smart contract directly, so they don't have to trust anyone else. But the main limitation of this approach is that our scalability is subjected to what Ethereum allows. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the details of how Kyber Network works. So basically what we do is we build a decentralized chain that can achieve both usability and also scalability at the same time. So we want to guarantee that all the trade must be settled almost instantly, and user can always trade with us because we can guarantee the liquidity in our platform. So these are all the good properties that we want to achieve in Kyber Network. And how do we do it? So first of all, what we do is we build everything on chain because we realize that it's Japanese, so I do not know what's going on. All right, so we build everything on chain because we realize that all the hybrid or off-chain order book model essentially require the user to trust some other party, right? And they need to trust the relayers or the indexer in 0x or SWAP model. So this is not really trustless in a sense. And we also remove the order book entirely from our exchange. So in our exchange, there's no order book at all. And we realized that if we want to put this order book on chain, it's going to create a lot of pressure to the main chain. So it's not going to be practical. And for the mainstream users, who do not have any technical understanding of how an exchange works, they won't be able to understand what is an order book, right? So what we do is we introduce the concept of reserve. So these reserve are like the banks in real life, right? These reserve, they will have a lot of coins and tokens that are ready to be exchanged with the users. So in our model, the reserve will provide the price, and the user will just see the buy and the sell price. And if the user are happy, they can just send a transaction and do the trade with the reserve on the smart contract. And because the reserve always have the coin, so the transaction can be executed immediately. So we have the incentive to bring more and more market makers or reserve into our platform. So the reserve, what they can get from being on Kyber Network is they can earn the profit from every trade, right? Because if you look at this, there's a 2 Japanese yen difference between the sell and the buy price, and the reserve. This is essentially the profit for the reserve. And we already prepare all the tools and software for the reserve to integrate with Kyber Network, so that they don't have to make any technical investment. And they just download the software and run it. So we have we also work with popular wallets providers so that we can get the user from this wallet to exchange directly with Kyber. So this will drive more and more traffic to our platform. Okay, so this is the architecture of Kyber, and I will explain it by showing the flow of a trade, right? So we have the reserve here with a lot of coins and tokens, and this is the main Kyber network contract that the users are going to interact with. And suppose the user want to exchange from some token A to some token B. The user will just send the token A to the contract, and we will talk to the reserve to get the price, right? And send the token A to the reserve as well. And we get back some token B from the reserve. The amount is corresponding to the price and the amount of token A that the user sent. And after that, we send back the amount of token B to the user. And everything happens, all the 4 steps happen within one single transaction on Ethereum. So this can be finished within 12 or 15 seconds. Of course, there are the reserve managers who are going to give the price quote to the smart contract and to maintain the reserve itself. We also have the Kyber operator who at the moment are ourselves. What we do is we need to do the KYC on the reserve to guarantee that the user can the tokens that the user are getting are clean tokens. And we also want to decide what are the tokens that we can list on our platform. So we introduce we allow more reserve to operate on our platform. This will benefit the users because we can make the price more competitive. So the idea here is if the user want to trade from Ether to Omega, right? We will talk to all the reserve that are supporting this token pair, and we will get the best price and send it back to the users. So we did our token sale in September last year. We raised 200,000 of Ether. Back then it was around 50 million US dollars, and half of it is spent on the first reserve in our platform. So we want to guarantee the liquidity in our platform. We already launched our platform on mainnet, but right now it's still in a pilot mode. We only open it to 5 or 10,000 users. In a few weeks from now, we are going to open to everyone. So please go to Kyber.network and see how easy it is to trade with us. So I will provide some other updates on the platform development. So we have 3 main components. I forgot the name of the components. Oh yeah, this is the wallets. So what we want with this wallet is to bring more traffic to our platform. And this is the smart contract, I believe. Yeah. We develop all the main smart contract, the reserve smart contract for the reserve manager to maintain and keep the coins. So one important thing here is that the reserve. So the reserve manager, they do not have to trust us to keep the coins. They can always maintain and secure the coin, right? They do not have to rely on us because everything is on the smart contract. So this is the reserve dashboard, the main tool for the reserve manager to make the price, correlate the market view, and maintain their own reserve. So with Kyber Network, you can exchange with your own hardware wallet. So you don't have to send the coin to our exchange. You can just trade that directly from your treasure or ledger, right? So we also partner with popular software wallets like IAM Token or Trust Wallet, so that their users can just do the trade directly from their own wallets. So IAM Token is one of the most popular wallets in Ethereum. They have, I think, around 300,000 active users in China. And I think I can just show the integration with IAM Token, and you can see how convenient it is to trade with Kyber. So you just select the token pair, and you will know that how much currency that you are going to get, even some specific amount of Ether. And after a few clicks, you enter your password, and the trade is submitted. Now you only need to wait for the transaction to be confirmed. And it's gonna take like 12 or 15 seconds. Yeah, so I think it's done. So you can do everything from your wallet. You don't have to send your coin to our exchange or to our server. We also partner with a few other projects so that all these projects, what they do is they accept their own native tokens in their platform, right? So what we do is we partner with them and we allow the users to pay from other tokens, and the conversion is going to be powered by Kyber Network. So the users can have more. It's going to be more convenient for them to access to these platforms. And for Kyber, we can also get the direct access to the users. We have a few other strategic partners, including Blockchain and Berkeley, Enigma, Icon, and OneChain. So all these partnerships are for the future project that we want to do with them. So for Blockchain and Berkeley and Enigma, what we do is we work with them to collect the market view, to have the reserve, maintain the reserve ledger. And for Icon and OneChain, we want to support cross-chain trade, right? Like we want to support trading between Bitcoin and any other ERC20 token in a decentralized and trustless way. Okay, so with Kyber Network, what else can you do, right? The first immediate application is, a decentralized chains between any tokens. So here I explain, how Kyber Network is better than any other centralized chains. This is how you trade with other centralized chains, right? You need to deposit your coin by sending a transaction. And the exchange will ask you to wait for something like 10 to 15 minutes to confirm the deposit, and only after that you will be able to trade. And after the trade, you withdraw the coin back to your wallet. And the fees is the fee to withdraw the coins from centralized chain. This is like $10 to $15 at the moment. And users they just keep the coins at the exchange to avoid that fees, which is a bad practice, right? But with Kyber Network, what you can do is you can send your deposit, and Kyber can find the best rate for you, execute the trade, and return the target coin back to you immediately. Everything happens within one single transaction, which is 15 to 20 seconds. And you don't, at no point in this execution we keep your coin, or you have to trust us. Another application is the process payment. So suppose this merchants only accept Ethereum, and you have some other coins, right? Here, suppose you have like some business gold token. So what you can do is you can send your own token to Kyber, and we can do the conversion in the background and send Ethereum to the merchants. So this is similar to what Visa and MasterCard and several other payment companies are doing, but Kyber is doing it for the ERC20 tokens. So this is another important application that Kyber enables, the integration with other decentralized applications. So these are the a few right, decentralized applications in Ethereum and other blockchains, and we can see that each of these projects, they will have their own native token in their platform. So now, if I want to use any of these applications, I need to either have their own native token, or I need to buy them from the market. But with Kyber Network, we can okay. So for example, if I want to use some applications A, right, I need to send the token A to the applications, and and what happens if this application calls some other application, then that application also requires some other token. So now essentially I have to buy both token A and token B over there before I can start using the apps. So it is extremely inconvenient for the users. But with Kyber Network, you don't have to own any token at all. What you can do is you buy everything on the fly. First of all, you purchase token A from Kyber Network, and after that we will forward the token A to the app, and this application A will just buy on the fly token B with Kyber Network, and send the token B to some other applications, and everything happens within one single transaction, and the users do not have to have any other tokens apart from Ethereum or whatever token that they prefer. So we also plan to support the integration with other on-chain applications to enable advanced applications like derivative or hashing. This is a little bit complicated, so I think because I'm running out of time, so I will probably just skip it. Right. So that's all I have for my presentations. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you for presentation. Anything you have a question? Yeah, Homa-san.
you for the presentation. As far as I see, it looks like Omise Go. So I'm still wondering what's the difference between Omise Go solution and your solution.
Right. So for Omise Go, I think what they have in mind is to build a new full-fledged exchange, right, and running on their own blockchain, their plasma chain. For us, I think we run everything on Ethereum, and we have a different model. We have all the reserve and guarantee liquidity instead of supporting a full order book. So I think we both have different approaches, and we can actually work together to make each other more efficient and support more users.
For the customer, probably technology is a little bit different, like without order book or with order book or second layer or first layer. But from the customer's point of view, it's probably similar.
Well, I mean, we both operate as exchanges, right? So I guess that's the main similar point.
So it's similar, but will you provide a better user interface, the security, and the speed?
So I think we follow different models. We have different approaches, and we can support different applications as well. I don't think Omise Go can allow decentralized applications to interact with each other, right? The ease of integration with other on-chain entities. I think we're much better. But in terms of scalability, I think Omise Go probably have better solutions.
So if Omise Go is better solution, what is the advantage of Kyber Network?
I mean, like in terms of scalability, we're supporting more transaction and more trade. But there are other applications that we can do, but Omise Go cannot.
Thank you for your presentation. So I have two questions. So first one is that the Kyber Network guarantees a liquidity. So it sounds similar to the banker network. Do you know the product name?
Yes, I know banker.
Yeah, and I want to know the difference between banker and Kyber Network. And then the second question is that how the Kyber Network's native token, demand for the token will be increased. So I didn't find the use case of the token in your presentation. So could you explain it?
Right. So for the first question, I think Banco, what they do is they have some on-chain pricing oracle, right? And they use some, very simple equation to determine the price, which is, I think, not practical at all because the price will be determined by the market, not by some, formula. And we have seen that the adoption of Banco is not that great. Because it's not aligned with what the market thinks. For the second questions, so the main use case for Kyber Network token is for the market makers or for the reserve to pay the fees to the platform in every transactions. And what we do is, for after we collect the currency from the reserve, we burn a portion of it. So that's going to reduce the supply of currency token in the market, and we think that if the adoption of our platform increases, the more that we can burn currency.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chaikit. I'm the CEO and founder of Trace2.io. I'm very, very glad and happy that I'm able to come to Tokyo to share with you this project that we're on. Now, how many of you are actually from the financial services industry? So you must know about AML, anti-money laundering, KYC, CTF, counter-terrorism financing. So it's going to be a very boring session. Alright? So I hope that after your drinks that you had earlier on, this will be a bit lighter. And I also have the English version prepared here, so I won't get into the situation that Lloyd got into earlier on. So it's good to do the second round. and I have to press 2 times here. Alright, so Trace2.io is actually a project that focuses on AML KYC at the moment. Just a bit of introduction, we've actually launched the private round ICO 9th of February, and our private round is actually technically closed. We're raising, not selling here, don't worry. We were actually raising. Li Hong, you okay?
Yeah, it's fine.
You just fell down. And we are raising 30 million, selling 30 million worth of tokens, of which 24 million are covered in the private round, currently oversubscribed. 6 million for the public round that will be announced later part of this week, and it will be launched in April. All right. Now, AML KYC problem has been around for a long time. It has not been solved. A lot of people are trying to do something along the lines of AML KYC or the likes of identity management, and pretend or thinks that is going to solve the AML KYC problem. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone has actually solved it, and we attempt to contribute to the solutions as well. And it's still one of the biggest problems globally in the financial services space, and I think with the rise of cryptocurrencies and blockchain, it's both potentially a problem as well as an opportunity, especially with the likes of regulators around the world coming down hard and say that one of the first things that they say about cryptocurrency is that a lot of money laundering is going through it, and therefore there is an opportunity for us in that space. Okay, and the thing we look at it is that it's actually a rather expensive problem. United Nations actually estimated about 1 to 2 trillion dollars globally that is being laundered in throughout the whole world, which is almost like 3 to 5% of the global GDP. And this is the scale of the problem. So it's about $320 billion that is being spent by global financial organizations in the world to pay fines, to pay remediation exercises and the likes throughout the whole world. This is talking about the banks and the big financial institutions only. And another source, Let's Talk Payment, estimated that $70 billion was spent by large banks to put in remediations as well. Yeah. So I'm just trying to talk to you about the scale of the problem at the moment that is being recorded. And what does that all mean? It means that there's Let's Talk Payment estimated there's about more than $120 billion worth of opportunities by the year 2020 for regulatory technology solutions to help solve some of these problems. So that's why we're here. Now, this is a problem not just for the banks or the large financial institutions. And the way we see it, banks and FIs referring to financial institutions here. So these are the ones that are obviously, in Japan, for example, regulated by the FSA, in Singapore, Monetary Authority of Singapore, and Hong Kong, and HKMA and the like. So these are pretty standard. And they have been, and they should have been doing this for the last, how many decades? It's about 2 decades, huh? Because typically for anti-money laundering requirements, it sort of came about because there's this global financial, international body called Financial Action Task Force, in short FATF, that was only founded in the year 1991. All right, so there are about 35 member countries in the whole world, Japan being one of them, Singapore, Hong Kong, UK, US. So everybody needs to comply with these requirements that is being set, or these standards that is being set internationally. Now we think that with cryptocurrency or the likes of fintech, there is also a need to do that, as I explained earlier on. And another 2 categories, which is probably slightly less relevant to this audience, is DNFBP. Anybody who can guess what is DNFBP? I'm going to buy you a beer. It's not a term, acronym that I come up with, it's a real term. It's called Designated Non-Financial Businesses and Professions. So that refers to accountants, lawyers, corporate service providers, trusts, casinos, real estate agents. So these are the people that is being hit by, and this requirement is global. So of course some countries are slower in implementing the regulatory requirements and some are faster. So DNFBP is one area that we interact a lot with as well. And the other ones will be, no price for guessing, NPOs, non-profit organizations, charities, and religious organizations. And the risk is slightly quite the reverse. Yeah? DNFBP particularly focus a little bit more on the anti-money laundering aspect. NPOs particularly, the risk is more on the counter-terrorism financing aspect. All right? Just to take this a little bit further, do you know the difference between money laundering and counter and terrorism financing? Money laundering is basically turning bad money good, right? And terrorism financing is turning good money to bad. Good money to bad. Is it just good money to bad? It could be both, right? It could be a bit of bad money to bad as well as good money to bad. So that's slightly more complicated as well. So these are the areas that we think are emerging. I mean, this is a little bit, as I said, it's been there. They should have gotten it right, but unfortunately, I don't think they get it right. There's a lot of bad intent, you know, that only within these walls. I think money laundering was actually invented by the banks. Anyone would disagree? No? Yes? I used to work in the bank, so I'm no longer in the bank, so I can say bad things about the bank. Okay, but anyway, that's just a side joke. Now, regulation versus happiness. Is that the right translation? Self-work. I thought that's results. Actually, my intention is actually regulation versus happiness. So what does that actually mean? If you put it in a simple graph, this is happiness and efficiency, and this is regulation. Yeah, I made this up, which I don't think anyone who works in the financial industry will disagree, right? Because with more regulation, AML or otherwise, you're gonna have nobody's gonna be happier, right? So regulators themselves are not very happy because they have more things to manage. They have more, rules to enforce, and the licensee or the entities, whether it's crypto or non-crypto, they have to, their happiness goes down. So when happiness goes down, efficiency goes down as well. So this is the current state of play. So now what we're trying to do is actually try and reverse this. We can't change this, which is why we're insulated. From an industry perspective, regulation is going to go one way, which is going to go up. And we could potentially make use of technology, make use of slightly more efficient approach to the problem, digitization, automations, to somehow turn this green arrow a little bit, not downwards, but turn it a little bit upwards, yeah? Hopefully it goes in tandem. Now, next. So it's a little bit further, explanation on a similar point. Inefficient regulatory outcome, ineffective and manual analog processes, as well as limited resources, results. And if you get it wrong, on the other side of this diagram, potentially there's going to be criminal liabilities, reputation risks, and monetary penalties. So if anyone thinks that if you're in the crypto space, you don't need to comply with AML requirements, because ICO is not regulated, because some crypto exchanges are not regulated, maybe not in Japan, but in some other locations, then you don't need to care about AML, don't need to care about CTF. That's probably wrong, huh? Because most countries, as I said earlier on, Financial Action Task Force would have implemented all the recommendations for every country to comply with, and in each country you will have the laws that is being written up to prevent or to counter this bad things from happening. So typically, most legislation will apply to everybody that is in the country itself. Whether you are actually helping, you may not be the one laundering the money, but you may not be the one terrorist financing the whoever, but the law actually applies to you. So when the law applies to you, it doesn't mean that if you are anonymous, you are exempted from the law. So it's a kind of very simple concept that we based upon. So which means that AML KYC is never equal to happiness, unfortunately. Now, so what we're trying to do here, value proposition. We were trying to build an inclusive KYC solutions to the cryptocurrency market participants, and were enabled by fusing smart contract with artificial intelligence technology. And we seek to revolutionize the KYC processes by bridging the gap between the physical world and the virtual world KYC processes. Okay, so we're trying to level up the regulatory plan. And it's also in a way, focus on cryptocurrency market. We want to future-proof the industry. We want to future-proof the ecosystem. Because if you think about it, as I said earlier on, the financial institutions as well as the banks, they've been doing this for a number of years. Whether they get it right is separate, right? But that's the standard. So if cryptocurrency players are here, then there's a need to actually level up, right? So that you can actually potentially, be better because you're not burdened with the legacy issues, and you're not burdened with the legacy system that the banks and the traditional FIs are facing at the moment. So you do have a better head start, I would say. I'm not saying that you have to compete with them, but from a perspective of complying with the potential requirements that's going to hit the community, then that is probably a better way to look at it. Now, so what do we want to do? We service the underserved, and by underserved we mean fintech startups, blockchain startups, cryptocurrency startups. So we want to focus a little bit more on the crypto exchanges, the wallets, and even the ICOs, because a lot of times the bigger enterprise out there who sells AML, KYC solutions, they are pretty expensive. And it's very entrenched because once they sell something, they want to sell it in millions of dollars. So which means it makes it very, very difficult for the smaller players to actually acquire something that is fit for purpose. So that's what we want to achieve, and we want to promote this concept called, I don't know whether it's translated here, regulatory inclusion. So we hear a lot of things on financial inclusion. How do you promote financial inclusion and so on and so forth, right? We want to be inclusive. But we basically want to say that, okay, we want to promote this concept called regulatory inclusion, which is basically, like I said, if regulation applies to almost everybody who's, performing the likes of, let's say, Kyber, who's going to be an exchange, whether it's centralized or decentralized, you still need to, have the obligation on AML, KYC. Then to be able to let them be included in the regulation in terms of the level of compliance or the state of compliance, then that itself is actually trying to be inclusive, right? That's one concept. So I'm not going to read all these to you, but very, very simply put, KYC in our definition in Trace2 basically refers to a set of processes or controls that your organization have put in place to basically demonstrate that you have accessed various risks, including money laundering risks, terrorism financing risks. So a lot of people use these terms synonymously, but actually they mean slightly different things. Because KYC in our mind is actually broader. Know your customer. Know your customer for what? Are they bringing you money laundering risk? Are they bringing you counter-terrorism financing risk? Or even, we want to extend this to creditworthiness as well as product suitability. Because if I know there's some questions about more products coming through to some of these exchanges or crypto exchanges, then there is obviously a need to consider areas like, are your users going to be suitable for slightly more complicated products beyond just simple token swaps, right? So these are some of the areas that we think over time needs to come into play as well. So at the moment, I think AML and CTF is the biggest pain point. So this is where we're focusing on. And product suitability and creditworthiness will come eventually. Now, if we, another way to look at this diagram is like, this is KYC. So, AML typically look at the person's profile, facial recognition, OCRs, and then even thinking of looking at video recognition. And over this side will be, you want to keep the bad people out of the system. So you have the screenings of the known terrorists, sanctions, PEPs, politically exposed person, or people with adverse media. So these are typical things that's being done by in the banks, in the FIs, but a lot of them are doing it manually, right? You put in the name into the system, and then you print out the record, sign your name to show that you've done your work. This is all yesterday's approaches, which actually should be changed. So a fair bit of automation, a fair bit of potentially looking at how blockchain can help in this process. And then ongoing due diligence. Because we think of KYC, we typically say that we finish KYC and then we just want to do it once, but the reality is it's not like that. So the entity or the organizations is being obliged to carry out KYC activities or due diligence it has to be done continuously, right? Which ensures that we're always in the business. So, which is a good thing, right? So, in that respect, this is where we want to focus on, and as well as transaction monitoring. And then product suitability is over there, credit worthiness is over there. So I'm not going to go through too much detail there. Now, if I distill that frame, these things that we talk about into 4 questions, yeah? So if you don't take anything away from this session, at least remember these 4 questions, which is the Trace2's KYC framework. Now, the whole KYC thing is around trying to find out who you are, right? Quite straightforward, right? Determining and verifying identity. We're not trying to we're not trying to become an identity management company or a platform, because I think there are various work that is being done in that space at the moment. One, a number of governments around the world have actually explored trying to issue their own version of e-identity, right, and kind of a utility, which is no problem. It doesn't threaten us. It basically means that we have one additional source to plug in, right, to validate it. If all the governments in the world comes up with something like that, that's who you are. Now, the second part, who you're not. Basically, we want to make sure that there are other people, some of the people that potentially present higher risk on money laundering and terrorism financing have been kept out of the system. Such as potentially politically exposed persons, sanctions or terrorist and profiles relating to special, because a lot of the bigger tech companies like the AWS and Microsoft Azure as well as Google have already they are selling these products actually quite cheaply in the market right now. So we're probably not going to focus on something that these people are focusing on. So we want to see how we can actually fine tune this recognition algorithm to make sure that it's more targeted. And one interesting point that we want to do really is around transaction monitoring, identification of unusual, large, suspicious transactions in the crypto space. All right. Now, moving on very quickly, the roadmap. As I said, we launched our ICO. We intend to complete in Q2, but it's going to be much earlier, so it's going to be probably next month. And then we are going to do what is this word? Testnet with we've got some acronyms here, so you can refer to the white paper. AI, public governance, storage system. So this is the general roadmap that we have. But we think that because we typically tend to under-promise and over-deliver, so we will put in a bit of buffer in there, and hopefully we'll be able to deliver some of these milestones much earlier than planned. Now, what I want to touch on the next 2 slides is basically the team that I have. This is me. Now, this is where I talk about Synopsys. Now, Synopsys at the moment is a software as a service company that is focused on providing RegTech solutions to anybody who wants to do AML KYC. So we currently have about 500 clients. Actually it's global, but more in the Asian region, to the likes of fund managers, remittance companies, payment companies, fintech companies, crypto companies, as well as the non-financial services providers like the lawyers, accountants, and the corporate services providers. Okay, so this is what we do, and with Trace2, it's actually an extension of what Synopsys wants to do, but targeted at the crypto space to build a utility. Right, so there's a difference between a utility versus software as a service. So software as a service, I sell the software to you, you use it on your own device. Yeah? So, device meaning it will still be cloud, hosted in the cloud, but you will have to manage that software yourself. But a utility will mean that the rest of the management of the whatever that gets plugged in, the software itself, as well as using the community to perform some tasks for us, these will be managed within the ecosystem, the network itself. Right, so it's a slightly different thing here. Now, another thing that I will sort of highlight here is that I'm honored to be serving on Kyber Network's advisor board as well. So, Loy and Li Hong, thanks to that. And I also advise this startup called RegTech Revolution they basically want to build a RegTech ecosystem in Asia region. And I think last week they did some training work up here in Tokyo as well. And then when I have run out of things to do, I actually teach compliance officers how to become compliance officer with International Compliance Training Academy. So that's me. I have got compliance and regulatory and audit knowledge for about 20 years, so that makes me quite old actually. So this is my CTO with experience in blockchain and KYC and credit. So Jean focused primarily on the data science aspect. And then we have got Dan, who's the marketing guy, and then we have got Robin, who's got a long history of RegTech, InsurTech, as well as compliance and RegTech background. Now, a bit on the advisor, we've got Professor Wee, who is actually the NUS, National University of Singapore's chair professor in the School of Computing in Singapore. So we have got that. Therefore, this project has got the advantage to have access to the university's lab people. And then we've got Loy, Dr. Loy. and we've got Lee Hong, who's also over there. And then we've got a regulatory advisor as well, Nisam. And I think some of you may have may recognize Simon Kim, who's the CEO of Hash, who is said to be the largest crypto fund in South Korea. Okay, so this is the project, this is our team, and that's it. Thank you very much.
So, if you have a question, yeah. Up. Yeah.
Thanks very much for the talk. So you mentioned about knowing your client and money laundering with specific use cases. How do you intend to solve the challenge of the cryptocurrencies into fiat, or fiat into cryptocurrencies? Because that certainly represents an interesting twist on how to be able to address it. Someone could be incredibly above the board with, dealing with Ethereum, and then suddenly once they have, filthy lucre, as they say.
Well, it's a valid question, and I think that's a concern. If I look at short answer is that there's no answer until such time whereby the conversion of fiat to crypto to fiat, that's actually done by the same entity or the same exchange, if you like. And I think there are some people who's actually exploring these services already. Yeah. So that part itself is basically to try and itself. I think the key point is through transaction monitoring, that you need to be able to identify what's considered unusual. Then before you identify what is unusual, you need to know what are unusuals. So this is the same thing as fraud. How do you determine what is a fraudulent transaction? So if you are trying to use the machine to learn, you must first tell the machine what to learn. So it's a problem. I don't exactly have the right answer to that, but there must be the condition of number one, it has to be done by typically the same people, which means that the exchange itself, the conversion of the trading crypto to crypto as well as crypto to fiat to crypto, that will make it easier. But having said that, if we're building Trace2 network, which means that it's going to comprise of multiple exchanges and potentially multiple wallets, and potentially that can give rise to or give us visibility to quite interesting information that may not be available if it's done by one exchange in a siloed fashion.
Right. I'm an optimist. I think it can be solved. The second question then is, would there not also then be part of your know your client, who you can influence? So I think everybody's heard about 7 degrees of separation. So if you have someone who you've determined is a known good quantity, and they continue to be a known good quantity for take the reverse, a known bad quantity, how far do they influence? And I'm sure you've addressed this, because that just simply feels like a directed graph, but just thought I'd be interested in your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, you see, okay, to answer that, let's take a step back. I make a huge distinction, between performing due diligence or carrying out, KYC tasks to comply or to try to comply to the requirement versus trying to become a policeman. They're two very, very different tasks there, and different objectives as well. Because if you try to become a policeman, and we don't seek to have trace to as the policeman, we don't intend to do that. We intend to provide this platform so that crypto participants and likes of exchanges and the wallets can actually be able to demonstrate to the regulators that they have done the due diligence. And it's never going to be in exact precision, because you cannot try and pretend that you're a policeman, and we don't want that to be the case.
Makes sense. So I was just curious, because I mean, we can, from what you're describing, you either advise people to accept the transaction or deny the transaction. So presumably there's a weighting factor that says probably Sally is okay, but George not so much, because he happens to be the second cousin of some notable crime lord. Right.
Well, I think the second cousin bit is an interesting point, because even if I look at the global, we always look at the global FedF standards and then you try to distill it down. It's never required that you need to establish associations to the second cousins of another person. So, if you do that, it's almost like a deep dive of what you typically call enhanced due diligence, which is, depending on what is, that's why the fundamental is risk-based approach. So if this person transacts, I don't know, say for example 10,000 worth of transactions infrequently and all that, so what if he's a second cousin of somebody that is known politically? It doesn't necessarily increase the risk of money laundering. So in this respect, we're looking at two very fundamental concepts of controls here. One is the preventive control, which is basically what you do, like onboarding and all that, but you can never do it in such a way that you block everybody out, right? And then you have no business to run, right? That becomes a bit silly. So you can put in a set of controls to say, let's, on a risk-based approach, let all these people in, and potentially there will be some people that will slip through the cracks, right? That shouldn't slip through a crack.
So basically, it's a low pass. Yeah. It's a low pass filter.
Potentially. Then after that, you apply the second set of control, which is actually your detective control, right? Which is your transaction monitoring. And I'm looking at the grand scheme of things, whether potentially this person was good when he joined the system. The next month he happened to be on the terrorist list or the OFAC sanction list or what list, whatever that is. Then this person should be blocked. That's also a form of detective control, because you had let him in the first place. But the fact that he was in the system doesn't mean that you have breached a law, because you have applied a risk-based approach right at the beginning. But you continuously look at his profiles as it gets updated, and you continuously track whether or not his transaction gives rise to any suspicion or any unusual activities that is not accorded with his risk profile, for example, or the clusters of similar users, that are behaving or categorized in the same bucket, for example. So there are different ways to look at this. You can look at it as in clusters, you can look at it individually, but at the end of the day, how much money you want to spend on this? Who wants to pay for it? If this becomes almost like a detective work or a police job, then, no one needs to operate. Everybody works for the government.
Understood. It's the difference between tamper-proof and tamper-evident. Tamper-proof is impossible. Tamper-evident is merely maybe expensive. Okay.
But you have to take a risk-based approach on that, because this is carrying out due diligence activities to defend yourself when for want of a better term, when shit hits the fence. Otherwise, you're not gonna have defense. If you say that, I'm operating a crypto to crypto, therefore I'm not regulated, I can do whatever you want. Remember, money laundering typically involves 3 stages. placement, layering, and integration, right? So layering could be that the money has already been in the system, and they're just trying to swap tokens to create multiple layers so that it's difficult to track. So that's one of them.
Thank you. So next question.
Thank you very much for the presentation. That makes one of the most boring topics quite interesting.
Okay, I was worried that you're going to say one of the most boring topic into a more boring section.
No. I'm in the same industry, so it was very joyful. And my question is, the toughest part is always onboarding, because it's like you mentioned, it's done really manually so far, and then it will be continuously done manually by someone. Are you considering? I think you mentioned like a lawyers, accountants, and but I didn't hear banks. So, is there any particular reason why you're not considering? Because they have all the information already, and I understand the data privacy and all sorts of issues that may stand in front of you, but it's solvable. So I'm just curious why you didn't include banks.
I would be promoting exclusivity if I say I don't want to include them, right? But having come from banks, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well, working with banks is always more difficult than working with other people, somehow, right? And by that I mean there are a lot of requirements. You cannot even plug in anything to them, right? Because if you're thinking along the lines of, oh, they have a huge source of customer data, you have secrecy obligations in some countries, then that makes it a lot harder, right? So what we're trying to say, or use the professional services providers, is for them to actually perform some tasks for the community so that they can also earn some T2T tokens. It's rather than trying to tap into their customer base. There's a slight difference there. But simply put, we feel that working with the banks is going to be very, very hard. You're going to have a long sales cycle. You're going to have a huge effort, proof of concept and whatnot. And at the end of it, you may not get anywhere. Because we've seen examples of these happen before. So even with Synopsys, we do not sell to banks. From a business perspective, I'd rather they come and look for me. I think I probably have a better bargaining power than I try and knock at their doors and sell to them. Not sure whether that answers the question. It's going to be a little bit more challenging, that's all.
Okay, but it's the key for example, user is the database you have.
Yeah.
So that seems to be, for me, as if I want to use your service, you need a robust data to begin with. That's what I feel.
Yes.
And then in Singapore, I learned recently KPMG is trying to do some like a prototype data sharing among banks in Singapore. So maybe not in Japan, but Singapore seems to be a little bit more advanced in terms of mindset. But maybe it's a long planning.
It is. I mean, this is like we're trying to, and you see, and nothing against KPMG, nothing against the banks. It's just that a lot of things are at the proof of concept stage, wherein you have cryptocurrency actually already live, already doing stuff, already onboarding users, already have people transacting fiat into crypto, and then already trading in the market. So it's way ahead, and for us to continuously or try to work with this very, very slow moving organization, this is just a business decision that I made. We're not going to be able to help them. By the time these people look at all these solutions, almost like a pageant show, and select whoever they want to work with on the proof of concept for 9 months, these community would have moved on to the next stage. So that's why I didn't want to do that. And on your point on database, there are two parts of database that we're talking about. One is actually the bank's database, which is the bank's customers, which I think we can forget about it if we want to tap into it at this moment. Now the second part of database is that a lot of time when you do all your manual KYC checks or even your screenings, you're plugging into a screening database. We're not trying to review that. We work with existing database companies like Dow Jones and likes of TRs and all that. So these are which we think that if there's some parts that have been built properly and it's being used widely, then why rebuild it? It's a waste of resources. So we rather be almost like a bit like an educator to be able to plug in this so that everybody else gets to benefit, right? But the reality is that somebody's going to pay for it. So it doesn't mean that decentralization is going to lead to lower costs. We can try as much as we can with the advancement of technology. Like I said, facial recognition is becoming very, very cheap. So therefore, there'll be some cost savings there, but there's some cost that we need to pay to, let's say, the vendors, for example, on all the screening services. Then there'll be gas costs to write the smart contract and all that. So all these have to add up. But if it comes out to, if you want to do a KYC and it costs $50, nobody's going to do it. Or maybe some will do it, provided that they have an urgent need to be KYC and because they want to acquire a service from someone. And a lot of times the manual work at a bank's KYC process is not strictly focused on just AML and CTF. There's a lot of times they need to make all tax declaration, right? All your FATCA, all your CRS declarations. And if you're a financial advisor, you have to do all your product suitability, product knowledge, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a huge list of questionnaires that need to be completed. So I think we need to take things one step at a time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, anyone else? So just I want to know how to determine your KYC score.
So as I said, with all the 4 questions that we will seek to answer, who you are, who you're not, are you still who you say you are, and what did you do? So we will have a mechanism, we haven't worked out the actual formula, to basically compute a score, right? And then this score will be attached to a person, but it's not going to be the be all and all, because scores can be improved, scores can decay. So if let's say you KYC and you've gone through this process, and let's say, just randomly saying, if you get a score of 85, and then you didn't do anything with it, and you didn't acquire any service from, say for example, our partners, then there's this decaying element that will kick in, because it means that you have only answered 2 questions, and you haven't really. We do not know what are your activities. We do not know what are you gonna do in the future. But so there's the scores decay. So if the score decays, it then incentivizes the user some way to basically keep the score up to date, right? So that if before you actually transact in the next ICO or participate in the next ICO or the next exchange for any transaction, then we will need to re-screen you, for example. But we don't need to say, okay, give me all your passports all over again, because we already have that record. But if we will have the tracking mechanism that if the passport is going to expire, then we will be able to prompt to say that, hey, you need to update it, otherwise your score is going to go down. Something along those lines.
Okay, and you have to follow a regulation for each country, because there are different regulation, right?
That's definitely will, which is why earlier on I stressed that right from the beginning, we want to take a step back and go look at a higher level first. International anti-money laundering, counter-terrorism financing requirements are fairly similar. One country will typically copy from the another country, and then update it along the way, and then Financial Action Task Force will then issue updates to the 40 recommendations from time to time. So all the countries will catch up, right? So typically most requirements are very, very standard. Now, I suppose what will be different will be potentially the privacy requirements will be slightly more unique. But this is my personal view. Privacy and privacy laws does not preclude the need to comply with anti-money laundering requirements. Right, that's quite fundamental.
Thank you.
I have a question. So how are you different from other KYCs? Because there are a lot of KYCs coming up and then...
Give me an example, which one you're referring to?
The Bitsushi.
Bit sushi, I've not heard of bit sushi, sorry. So, okay, then from what I understand, there's a lot of, there's a lot of competition in this space. In the real world, in the crypto world, some have already started some projects in this space. But so far, I say there is a lot of them focused on identity management, right? So because it's the simplest thing to do. Or let's build an identity management platform and say, okay, you just give me your passport, I digitize it, and then I give you a token, and therefore this is your e-identity, and then you can do whatever you want to do with it. Then the question is, who's going to accept that token, right? And then who are you going to work with? So that's probably one problem. And the question is that there are many of these identity management players out there, which means that over time you're going to see that there's going to be one person who hold multiple identity tokens. And then how are you incentivized to keep it up to date? And a few of these people are actually using AML, using KYC as the front to potentially build a marketplace to sell you other things. I've come across one that tries to help people apply for passports and things like that in some jurisdiction on the premise that they already got your e-identity in place. So very different. We look at solving the KYC problem holistically rather than trying to say, okay, let's build identity management and go from there. And you can see that from the backgrounds of like myself, the team, we have been in this space, AML, KYC compliance for a long time. So I think that makes quite a lot of difference. Because most compliance officers who are highly paid will not give up their job to do a startup like that. Most, I haven't come across one. Let me know if you come across, then I know I have a competition.
It's already there in Bitsushi, so they are tied up to many other ICOs. So most of the ICOs are directly they are saying, okay, if you want a token, then you have to go through this.
And the business concept is not rocket science. I'm sure it can never be only us doing it. There will be other people around the world who will do it. But I think we do have a bit of head start because within Synopsys itself, as well as some of the clients in Synopsys that in the crypto space, they have actually committed to take up Trace2 token sale, and with the view that they're eventually going to use it, then that will obviously be a good plus point for us because we come with at the moment we service about between 75 to 80 crypto ICOs, and we've got a pipeline of like about 50 coming through. So that itself is a very, very healthy pipeline. We can't be the only provider, in this space. We're happy to plug in identity management tool. We're happy to plug in any other service provider that can do some parts of the questions better than us, rather than to build everything ourselves. Because otherwise, again, as I said, that's a waste of resources. All right?
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we take out 10 minutes break and we will do the panel session after that. So thank you.
It's just been time the final program today. No, the final program today.
Hi everybody. So please take your seats. So we have founder of Kyber Network and Tractor today. Yeah, Tractor. Sorry, yeah. Tractor. There's a different pronunciation. Sorry. Yeah. So if anybody wants, I would like them to speak about the blockchain and then how is it going in the global community. And I want to know. We want to know how Singapore is accepting blockchain and ICO and cryptocurrencies.
Okay, so this is a very broad question. I don't think there's a the correct answer, right? So I'm just trying my best. So I think Singapore, the crypto scene in Singapore is still very good. More and more projects are coming to Singapore and trying to register their base there. The government is friendly. I think they already publicly announced that they don't have any plan to regulate ICO. I think part of the reason is that the men on the street are not getting affected. People are not, quitting their work just to do crypto trading. And there's, I think, I haven't heard of any scam project in Singapore because I think first of all the community can self-regulate, right? If there is any scammy project coming to Singapore, we probably meet them and ask them to not do it here in Singapore. And the lawyers and the ecosystems surrounding the ICO process also do not work with scammers. So that eliminates these bad guys from our ecosystem. In terms of what else would I add?
I've got my views about this. Now, it's a bit of a conflicting signals, I would say. Although I think from a lot of other countries looking from outside to Singapore, I think the thing is that Singapore is friendly to a lot of things because it has to, because it needs to generate business, for a very, very small country. So, but what I say conflicting signals is that if I read and focus on some of the regulators' speeches, like the managing director of MAS, Monetary Authority of Singapore, that have said certain things about cryptocurrency that is not so encouraging. So, and I quote, this is public domain. So, one of the things that he mentioned in the last couple of months when you have all the Bitcoin and all the cryptocurrencies prices coming down. So he was quoted in a public seminar who said, after all the fever is gone and the crash has occurred, I hope that the underlying technology, blockchain technology, can survive. So that was one of the comments that he made, which struck me as you're trying to separate cryptocurrency and blockchain into two parts, and it's not a question, it's a statement. So after it has crashed, after the fever is gone, so in my mind I felt, okay, so what is the intention here? Do they encourage it or do they not encourage it? And then because I'm a compliance person, right? So I think a little bit deeper. And again, this is within the four walls. My sense is that cryptocurrency obviously potentially can be very lucrative from a tax perspective. We've gone through quite a number of conversations with accounting firms on how do you treat, say for example ICOs. If you raise $30 million, how do you treat this money? Is that equity? no, you don't want it to be equity because it's typically utility token, right? Then you then have to consider whether it's revenue. So revenue got to be taxed, right? So depending on which jurisdiction you operate, then there's a corporate tax element to it, and potentially there's also an element of value-added tax, goods and services tax, for example. And then the third part is actually if let's say you a part of the token is actually issued to the founders and advisors, what's the next thing? Income tax, right? So there are these various aspects of it which I think the government, whether it's in Singapore or other countries, may see that as a potential revenue inflow. So why stop it now? Let them all come in first, and then let's go through them after that. Make sense?
So we have Homo-san, who is a blockchain influencer in Japan, so he is very talkative. And yeah, I mean, I got many knowledge about blockchain from him. Let's hear from him about the blockchain and then how it's going in Japan. How Japan is trying to use the blockchain, and then what is the view of the companies in Japan about the blockchain?
So Japan was very Liberal Democratic Party has been friendly for cryptocurrency and Bitcoin and blockchain since 2014. June or July of 2014, and FSA has been also very friendly to blockchain, Bitcoin, and ICO until November last year. But recently, as everybody knows, CoinCheck has lost 700 million equivalent Zen, and Zai did some mistake also, and FSA is thinking that they need to regulate players more strictly. So actually 1 year ago, Japan was a paradise for ICO, but recently it has changed a lot, and I'm an advisor to several companies, and personally I like to talk with FSA about regulation and compliance, but it's not the right timing to do it because FSA is very busy with exchanges. So I'm not sure how FSA and Liberal Democratic Party and many Japanese will react to this environment. But I'm very optimistic about the industry in the long run. And if we do positive development, technology development and business development, if we do it properly, we can be still very optimistic. Maybe I cannot predict the market. I cannot predict the price of Bitcoin or Ethereum or prices of ICOs, but in the long run, it's very optimistic.
So yeah, this is the question for Kyber Network. So the cryptocurrency market is so volatile. So how Kyber Network is going to address that?
I don't think we can address that market. It's impossible for one single project to decide whether the market can be volatile or not, right? But I think what we can do is we can offer some future products that the user they can do hashing or they can do some other things to reduce the risk when they do crypto trading in a decentralized and trustless way. And of course, if we can offer a good platform so that users can do the trading and they are not vulnerable to like security hacking, and I think most of the hacking incident won't happen as frequent as we have seen so far, because if you look at the recent CoinCheck hack, right? After the hack was announced, the price of the currency dropped significantly. So that affects the entire market. So in a sense, we are addressing that problem.
Maybe he's expecting you to say that you're going to be so big that you are the market.
Yes. Thanks. We are looking forward to that.
If anybody has a question, please.
I have been wondering about ICO and equity relationship. So if I am an investor, I invest in a business that issues coins, should I be interested in owning equity in the company, or should I be interested in getting more tokens? And if the business grows and someone wants to buy the business, so I own either equity or token, when I exit from my investment, which do you think would be better? And what the buyer would be buying, tokens or equity?
Can I go first? I think if you can have the cake and eat it, you want to have the equity and the token, right? Realistically, but in another way you look at it, it's almost like double dipping. So that's something that typically the community doesn't really like. But the reality is that even if there's a cryptocurrency ICO, it's still a company. It's still whether it's a foundation or whatever. It's still an operating entity. Bearing aside the legal structuring and for one of the better terms, the legal gymnastics that some people go through, hopes to get to a certain point. It's still something that has got some worth if that entity gets sold off to somebody who have expressed interest to buy it, and you typically just buy the equity. And then the token side will probably add on to the size of the balance sheet, depending on what gets treated from an accounting perspective, what gets treated on balance sheet and off balance sheet. Because if you have got a chunk of Ethereum or your own token that's been issued, then maybe that gets accounted for in the balance sheet. Part of it gets recognized as revenue and gets into the P&L, but for a certain amount that is not issued and doesn't create obligation, maybe the accountant will say that should be treated as off balance sheet, which is not a bad idea, right? So depending on when, at what point in time the exit comes in, then I think you will have different implications for investors for the token as well as for the equity. But I would have thought that at the moment most token investors are probably for the shorter term speculative nature of it. And if you're both, then you want to have the cake and eat it. But unfortunately, most times you don't have that ability to do so.
So I guess for a few early project, what they do is to set up a non-profit foundation to run the project, so it's possible to buy the share from that. And at Kyber Network, we also want to avoid that equity game. We have received a few requests that want to invest in our equity, and we just say no. And we do not want to create any conflict between the share and the token.
So, any other questions?
So nowadays, many ICO projects are just doing private sales, and less projects are doing the public sale. Do you think this trend is going to continue for ICOs in this year or not?
I was anti-ICO before, and I need to accept the reality recently, and I hope that both investor and industry players be becoming more sophisticated. And we have seen very many cases. Therefore, investor can educate from the previous cases. And as far as I see, it's always private sales first and public sales next. But obviously, private sale is more advantage. Investors has an advantage for the private sales, and I'm not sure it's fair or not. So I hope that everybody will be educated from the previous cases.
So I mean, just I want to add up some point on this private sale and the public sale. So why most company use public sale is like it's a free market. So it creates a free marketing tool for them. So as soon as any public sale is there or airdrop is there, then people are more interested on that to look into the company. So that's what one more advantage with public sale.
I think there are two parts to this, right? I mean, the first is that if you look at it from the ICO company's perspective, right? Bearing the purest of the pure view that this has to be servicing the community at large, then you want to go for 100% public sale because you want to make sure this is almost like a crowdfunding approach, right? And that's the nature of it. It has to be public in nature, right? But from an ease of administration perspective, you don't really want to, for one of the better terms, you don't really want to KYC 100,000 people, right? So therein lies that that struggle. Although I want to do that, but I will be stuck with this administrative hassle of having to KYC 100,000 people. Then if each person I raise, say I don't know, half a ether, then how much do I raise? Versus if I were to go to say 20 larger operators or funds, so-called VC funds in crypto space, then I can get to the same outcome and in a much more efficient manner. But if then on the flip side is that there is this concept of centralization, because you end up with whilst you're trying to raise funds to service the community in a decentralized fashion, technologically speaking, you end up taking the approach to centralize fundraising through only 20 investors. So how do you reconcile that? So there's no right or wrong answer to that. Especially at the end of the day, what is the objective they want to reach? The way they want to be, like I said, the purest of the pure, to be 100% public, and then run the issue of the administrations and operational details, or they want to achieve a quicker outcome on the race and potentially be able to offer that service to the community faster. So there's no right or wrong answer to that.
I think the anonymity of for example, the Koreans not disclosing who they are, and only show small percentage of people are disclosing. And whereas Japan, everybody must be transparent. And it took me, I live in Singapore, and it took me 1 month to get the transaction approval from the Australia. Yes. Well, I got 1 day approval, within 1 day for the Binance. This is something contradictory. The openness of the blockchain versus the anonymity allowed in each country. So some are superpower, controlling all the different practices in this crypto community must be done as soon as possible. Otherwise, it will jeopardize the whole crypto community. That's my strong feeling. What
Maybe Binance is actually not doing KYC. I don't know. Not sure.
Depending on 2 Bitcoin or
or maybe they have a backlog. You know, so there's various sides to the coin. So it doesn't mean that if it takes 1 month to do KYC, they are actually doing it properly. Maybe they are just not able to cope with the demand, and therefore it takes a long time. You know, or those people who give you the outcome in 1 day doesn't mean that they're doing it properly. So if we look at that, yes, there is probably I would call it like the nirvana stage, that everybody operates in the same platform and everybody operates, and that maybe that's what Trace2 seeks to do. But we know that it's not possible because there's always going to be people who may operate their own little ecosystem. They want to do their own things. They're bigger and they just want to make sure that they do their own stuff because they have already committed to the technology. They've already committed to the resources that they will do KYC, for example. So there are other ecosystem players or participants that we think maybe they're not equipped to operate in the same fashion as Binance or Bitfinex and whatever. So, you know, then that's where we want to come in to potentially be able to help them level up their standards. I mean,
that's the next question. That you said that you're doing the B2B business, right? But if you are also as a single government, that everybody who like to join the ICO must be registered with you.
Yeah.
That it could be a B2C business. And I'm all for that. If you do this.
Yes, it is.
Because it's a choice to register yourself each and ICO.
Correct.
And that's what I wanted to propose to you.
Yes.
And it could be a very good business.
Thanks for that. We could be a B2C, but we at the moment we don't see ourselves as exclusive just B2B. But it's just that if we try to acquire users one by one, then it's going to be a very, very steep slope because we have to firstly convince them, you got to pay me $2. This is why should I? You know, rather than if I were to go to the exchange and say the exchange brings me 50,000 users and they have no choice because if they want their service, they have to use our ecosystem. Then over time, then that sort of levels up everybody to the same playing field. Then indirectly we're providing that B2C. But when you say B2C, we're not actually taking money from the C. We're taking money from the B as an intermediary, which I thought is probably a more manageable approach. Yeah.
Let's talk about it very quickly.
Yeah.
So, anybody has questions?
It's kind of like a more general question, but like, how do you think like the current trend towards decentralization is going to change the world, like from a societal point of view, like in the next 10 or 15 years? Like the internet, like 20 years ago, I don't think a lot of people would have predicted this emergence of new kind of jobs like bloggers, YouTubers, so many new opportunities. What's your view about that? Like, if you try to imagine the future.
I think one great thing about blockchain and cryptocurrency technology is that it reduces the need of trust when different parties operate together. Right? So today I go to the street and I wouldn't do any trade with any person that I meet on the street, right? But with, for example, Bitcoin, I can easily send my Bitcoin to some other person without relying on any trusted party. And with smart contract, I can easily do the trade from, for example, Omisigel token to Kyber token on the smart contract without relying on that other person. So I think blockchain and cryptocurrency are enabling a better platform for people to operate and do business. And at the same time, I think it also allows other people, people who do not have any bank account to do business, to be part of the ecosystem. I guess Charky can also add more about the regulation part, right, and compliance.
I'm not going to add regulation part. I'm going to add something else. But if I'm still alive 20 years later, which makes me 65 years old, So, which means that it's very interesting how this potentially can change a lot of people's life. I think fundamentally, in my view, it sort of liberates people because in this or in the last I don't know, like 5 decades or so, everybody's been shackled with like the road that is usually traveled, right? It means that you go get an education, and then you get a university degree, and you find a stable job, and then you get married, blah, 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 blah. So you live your life in a very trodden fashion. But with blockchain, you potentially liberalize quite a lot of, human or mankind, if you like, which means that you potentially can do things in a very decentralized fashion, which directly will mean that you can potentially make a living, without being committed to any specific employer or any specific jurisdiction. So that itself, I think, is going to be very, very revolutionary for people, human beings, because it changes the whole paradigm of how we, what's our outlook of life. I don't know what this technology is going to bring us, because from a distributed ledger technology point of view, I thought, apologies to the tech people, I thought it's a very simple technology. Because it just means that everything is recorded in a decentralized fashion rather in a centralized fashion, right? It's just a matter of how the database is structured. So instead of having one computer that process everything, you now have maybe a million computers that programs all that. But therein lies the other problem. It's going to be costly, and electricity bill, who's going to pay for it? So, currency test. The way I look at this is this: if some of you may or may not have known, some of the histories, is that way back when I was still in the banks 20 years ago, in Singapore itself, they have this concept of that means the regulations against on the banks. This concept of non-internationalization of Sing dollar, right? Why do you have that kind of regulations against the bank? Because you do not want the banks operating in Singapore to be lending out money denominated in Sing dollars to foreigners, because they were worried that if too much Singapore dollars floats outside of Singapore, there is potentially that your currency gets attacked. And that's quite apparent in 1997, where you had the Asian financial currency crisis. Some of the countries' currencies got attacked quite badly, and they had quite a lot of issues after that. So there were good reasons why Singapore back then had this non-internationalization of Sing dollar. And if you then come to this moment, which is like 20 years later, you kind of think about it. If you create a virtual version of the currency, does that mean that you cut out part of your money supply and say, okay, now I don't know, I'm just making it up. Let's say 10 billion worth of Sing dollar is out of circulation, and then you replace that with an e-version of that money. Then what do you do with that? How do you restrict people from holding that money, or prevent that money from flowing out of the country? Because you potentially can do that with blockchain, right? Because it's virtual. And then therefore potentially there will be a loss of control. And it's kind of real, right? Because therein lies the risk to the country if too much of that goes out. But if you don't, then you say, okay, this money or the e-virtual money that they are creating only benefit this local banking community for settlements of transactions amongst ourselves. Then that's not really e-Sing dollar, or that's not really a digital currency, right? I think that's what they are trying to do. And then will this money or the e-version or digital version benefit the masses? I don't think they intend to let the people on the street use this version. It's actually more for the banks' internal settlements amongst themselves, intra-banks.
So every government has monopoly for their fiat money. Therefore, there's no point for Venezuela to issue their ICO. So I do not trust Venezuelan ICO by Venezuelan government, and Venezuelan fiat money is not reliable. So, but BOJ and UFG can use blockchain as a technology, but it's still JPY. So I'm not interested in ICO by not reliable government.
Just to add up to that point, like Venezuela is one of the, Italy is one of the, and then Estonia is one of the. So as for my studies, I come across they are doing only pre-sale. They are not going for public sale. So that means that the inside institution or as banks within that known community, so they want to circulate that tokens. So and then they don't want to call it as a currency. They want to call it as a token only, because it again regulates other countries to deal with them. Yeah, thank you all for coming. So let me brief you about again. So we organize this event twice a month, and then it's very honored to have Kyber Network and then Trace2 with us today. Yeah, please round of applause for them.
So, thank you for all the audience and presenters and venue owners hosting these meetups. The ColaboGate is taking efforts to bring out the good opportunity to interact with the projects and the membership. Can we work together in the future? So please be sure to, we need to go outside until the 10:30. It's been a late time. It's a time you should go to the bed. So yeah, let's have a fun today, and we wish, looking forward to seeing you all and everyone to go again. Thank you today. Thank you.
Please. Please join us for a picture.